care if this is recorded. I told Paul, I do care, but I don't care if we get this out every week. I want something that's good.
Yeah.
And if we have to skip a week, then we have to skip a week. I had wanted to do this week Mr. Levitt that we were talking about last time with the Tri-State building, but I didn't get the 12-page PDF until yesterday. And to me, that's just not enough time. Yes, can I read the 12 pages? Yes. Can I then write an entire podcast episode? No. So he'll be coming in the future. And I just decided, if we get stuff out every week, great. And if we have to skip a week here and there, that's fine too. Like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, his episodes are like 3-4 hours long.
Oh, yeah.
And it's months, if not a year, between episodes. But he massively drills down pretty deep.
Oh, yeah. It has all the good cutaways and all the imagery and all that. It takes a lot of time.
It does. And just what I do takes a lot of time, and I don't feel like I do an adequate job. And because I'm the one that uploads everything everywhere, it's always, could I do more? I probably could, but just time constraints, I can't. So I just want to do the best job that I can do, and if we end up missing a week, we miss a week. Like, I would love if we could get ahead for when I need to take the trip in March to see my mom. But if we don't and we miss that week, then we miss that week.
Yeah, we'll do our best.
And I also want to say hello to our at least one new viewer. I was talking to some folks on Reddit about the current situation with folks in Nebraska don't learn proper Nebraska history to begin with in school. Occasionally you do get a school district that teaches it correctly. But
it's better than others.
Yeah. But it is left too much up to the individual schools. The state mandates that you have to learn Nebraska history in 4th grade, and then that's it. You don't ever have to touch it again, and they don't. And
we did some fun things. I think my most memorable thing in 4th grade we did is we made the state of Nebraska out of clay. Well, but you had to make it. It was that flour and dough and salt, kind of child putty. And you made the whole state, and you had to kind of topographically make little ridges and mountains and paint the rivers and paint the cities and the valleys and all that.
That's cool.
And the more detailed you went, the better. And you had quite a bit of time. I think this was like an end of year project, and you were given it pretty much at the beginning of the year. So you had the entire year to get this done, and it was due at the end. It'd be all presented. Again, I came from a small rural school, so there's only, I think, 8 of us at the time. It wasn't like a large presentation, but that's, again, what I always, there's a big difference between budget, time constraint, and what you can do in a rural school with 8 kids versus a middle school with, 30, 40 kids a class.
Yeah.
And trying to get them all to behave. I mean, our teachers weren't necessarily strict, but us as our 8 kids were very much not. We knew when to shut up.
Yeah.
You didn't want to be the dunce in the class because then the other 7 kids were looking at you, so you didn't want to be that kid. So it was mostly well-behaved class. So, and that's how we did our history.
Okay. And my experience from when I moved here in 2007, it was like maybe a month at most. And the first teacher that I worked with just had them coloring stuff and reading something. And I mean, it was crap. And then the second year I was in that elementary school before I moved up to the junior high, it was about a month as well. And that's not enough. And I don't necessarily like that it's 4th grade only. I think you're too young to understand some of the nuances of things that happen in the state. New York State, I think it's still 8th grade. When I grew up, it was 8th grade that you learned it, and it was like half a year.
You start learning about the mobs and, and the bad mayors. And where do you even start with New York as far as the good versus the bad? I wouldn't even know it's such a rich history. I mean, it's, it's
we
so vast.
we did the Iroquois everything from the Iroquois Nation to we didn't touch too much on the mob because the mob's mainly New York City. Even though I grew up an hour and a half north of New York City, the mob was definitely in my town. It definitely still is there to a lesser degree than it was in the 70s. But we concentrate.
Yeah, the 80s is when it was all ramping up.
Yeah.
And they were all getting caught. But yeah.
Yep. So I was having this discussion. It was off of another discussion in the Nebraska subreddit, and someone had, the person who had originally posted, bless you. Oh, Connor's getting over a cold, folks, so nasty just excuse his sneezes and coughs. This person had posted, why do we not learn about slavery in Nebraska? And it's because, we're not going to get into the whole Bleeding Kansas and the Nebraska-Kansas Act and all that stuff, but slavery is a big foundation of this state, and
it is bizarre because growing up here through our history, from what I remember through history, what we learned about slavery was almost strictly Southern slavery, like the Underground Railroad, Martin Luther King, all your basic slavery, heroes, villains, and all that. But there's really more to the South. It is kind of blasé, just like, wait a second, what about over here?
Yeah, and we got that same thing, and we also got, because we're New York State, there was part of the Underground Railroad that went up to Canada. So we got that. We're the cool people who helped save black people from the South. They escaped, they got up to New York, and we helped get them to Canada so they were safe. And while they were here, we didn't send them back. Well, that's not entirely true, because there were cases where we did send them back. And just because the North was generally against slavery didn't mean that you didn't have your racists.
Or in segregation.
So we weren't really taught that. We were taught, New York, we're saviors of the poor slaves down south that escaped up here.
The term like sundown counties wasn't.
Yeah, no, I didn't learn about sundown towns until I saw First Blood.
Really?
And someone was talking to me about, the way they treated the Vietnam vets were the same way that they treated the slaves in the sundown towns. And I was in college then, and I'm like, what the hell's a sundown town? Yeah. And because no internet, I had to go to the library, and I pretended like I knew what I was talking about. I went up to the librarian, and I said, do you have any books that talk about sundown towns? And she knew what I was talking about, and then got me the book, and that's how I learned. But we didn't learn anything about that. And there were definitely sundown towns in the North. And, they persisted up through the 60s. And you and I have talked before about, how my grandma had to have that discussion with me as a little kid. Why does this tiny park have water fountains at each end of the park? Yeah, what's the point? All they did was remove the signs in my town. That's it. Yeah. And
you don't, I guess, if you really would have to dig into the history, because I really don't know how segregation worked out here. I am truly ignorant towards that. We've talked about the town just past Henry. That was a majority.
Empire.
Empire, which is a majority.
We need to get the whole episode done on Empire.
Yeah, but that was majority.
It was a black town.
Black town, slaves running or working on the railroads, such and such. But was that so much self-segregated or segregation on purpose? I don't know. I really don't know. It'd be worth the research.
I don't know if it was on purpose, but from what I do know from Empire, and it's why I haven't done it yet, because there's so much there. It's kind of a case of, I want to do a story on Empire and the blacks that live there, but oh my God, there's so much. Where do I start? What do I cover? What don't I cover? And for that, I do need like 2 or 3 weeks just solid working on it to do it. But from what I understand, they purposely moved up there. So it was a purposeful segregation, but it was we just want to live. We just want to exist. And if we live in this part and then travel to Scottsbluff or down to Lusk or wherever they were working, we can go home to Empire and just be. You know, like when you come home from work at night, you just want to come home and relax. You don't want to be bothered with BS. And so that's kind of how it was, and they settled this out. So it was kind of purposeful segregation, but the town also didn't last because of where it was at, and because they did experience racism and I'm not going to get into it now, but there was a whole thing with, did this one dude kill this white person or not, and all that goes with that, because the town only lasted, I think, 7 or 8 years.
Yeah, we definitely need to do a story on that.
And I have all the notes, and I've written stories about it, and since I wrote those stories at the paper, I've gathered way more information than what I had, because it was, there was this black town, and go write a story about it. So I did what I could at the time, and I had 3 days.
Yeah.
And now I'm looking at almost a decade later, and I continue to collect information about it. So I have way more info than I did back then, that I could do a better story. And in those circumstances, the only time I would reference one of my news articles is if I had quoted from a book or something, and I'm like, oh yeah, that was important. I need to make sure that's in the podcast. Otherwise, I try to stay away from it, because that information to me is already 10 years out of date, and I don't want to copy what I already did, especially since I know probably 7 or 8 times more than I did back then. Yeah. But it's also important history. So these folks on Reddit, we're just talking about how you're not taught about it. And I just happened to make a comment, and I said, well, I just did this podcast, a couple months back on these 2 ladies that were former slaves, and they came to Scottsbluff and settled here. And if you want to listen, here's the link.
Yep, that's right, we did.
And so that person responded and said to me, and I was going to look up their name today, and I completely forgot. But if they're listening to the podcast, they know who they are. And they replied to my message and had very nice things to say. They said they enjoyed the podcast.
Well, thank you very much. Yeah. We try our best,
Yeah.
We're just a small operation here.
Yeah. Just
not really
trying to
in it
share
for
shit.
Anything but the just to get it out and maybe talk about it. It'd be good to have something like call-ins or people that we can discuss with too.
Oh my God, dude, we haven't even figured video out yet. You want to do call-ins now?
I do need to figure out video next. I have it figured out. I just need to do it.
Okay.
I need to work on it. We talked about this. We talked about need to kind of switch job opportunities here.
Yeah.
Job that I have is just too demanding. It just takes too much of my time.
Yeah. And for those of you that don't know and don't understand, this stuff takes a lot of work. And you and I have talked. I listened to the Charismatic Voice on YouTube, and she just put out a video of how a typical week goes, and she has like a whole crew of 5 or 6 people now that help her. But she's also putting out like 2 or 3 videos a week, and her format is slightly different. But there's a lot of work that goes into this, and it was one of the things I hated at the newspaper. Go do this thing. You need to take photos, video, and get a story. The event's at 10 o'clock, deadline's 4 o'clock. Get all that stuff done. And we're giving you outdated video equipment, so it takes 4 times longer than what it should. And it always made me angry, but that was part of cost cutting going on in the newspaper business. It used to be if a reporter came out, you talked to the reporter, and they had a photographer that came and would take photos. And then I remember going to a Nebraska Press Women Conference, and they were talking about the Omaha World Herald. This was 2017, I think. They were talking about how they had just told their camera folks, their photographers, they were going to be videographers as well, and they were all upset. And I'm like, I've been at the paper for 5 years, and we've been doing this since day one that I got hired. Yeah. So it's a lot of work to put onto one person, and not saying anything to you, but
I get it.
I didn't mean that to come out that way.
I do mostly just show up here, folks. Irene does most of the work. I won't lie. I'm not. No need to take credit or nothing false. I just show up.
That's why I'm letting you do the whole video thing. But it does take a lot of work, and it is a lot easier to do if you had a crew of a whole bunch of people. But we don't get paid. We do this in our spare time.
As we go.
Yeah,
because I was completely dumb towards this.
Yeah.
Turning on a computer is very hard for me some days.
Remember the first time we recorded, and I was like, dude, we're talking really, really quietly. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong. Why is the volume not right? Because we had the volume jacked up, but we had other settings wrong. Mm-hmm. And I spent about 5 hours learning how to use this thing, and I still don't fully know how to use it, which is why I'm afraid to change any settings, because it works right now.
It's okay.
But, we learn as we go, and we share as we go. And now that we have just hit the 16-minute mark, we should probably talk about our episode today. So I had wanted to do Mr. Levitt from last time, but like I said, I just got the paperwork yesterday, or the PDF yesterday. So he'll be a future episode. I can't even guarantee he's going to be the next one. But we are going to stick with buildings, and I just want to read something to everybody. So everybody in western Nebraska and eastern Wyoming is cordially invited to attend the grand opening ball of the Wheat Growers Hotel, which will be held Monday evening, December 23rd. Mr. Cunningham states that he hopes to be able to make the formal announcement of the opening of the hotel at this time, but cannot assure this. The dance will be a good one, and all are invited. That was the grand opening announcement in the Western Nebraska Observer newspaper in 1918. And today on Storytelling on the Plains, we're going to talk about this historic building, which is located in Kimball, Nebraska. I like that quote because if you look at a newspaper today, something with a grand opening, it's got balloons, streamers in the ad, even a print ad, grand opening, date, time, location. That's it.
Flourish.
Yeah, and this is like a whole thing. And the assumption of what is as well is that you know who Mr. Cunningham is.
It sounds always like a fancy name.
Yeah.
I think even to this day, isn't that kind of the joke? It's like, what's your name? Oh, Mr. Cunningham.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you must be fancy.
Yes. And our talk last time about people who came out here from New York, there's a lot of them. I came across like 8 or 9 of them just in this past week of doing stuff. Cunningham I don't think he was from New York, but folks he worked with were. So anyway, the dance didn't go off with a hitch. In the December 19th edition of the newspaper, there was another announcement that was made that the opening ball was postponed until January 1st, 1919 because of a delay in the shipment of part of the hotel's heating plant. So you're going back 126 years now. It is cold in January. Ain't nobody coming out for a dance if your hall ain't heated. It's not happening. It was probably freezing cold. So
if you get enough people in there, get to dancing, it'll warm up.
True, but you got to get them there.
And
it's cold. Yeah. And so that's why it was delayed. And then in the January 19th, 1919 edition of the paper, it was noted that the hotel opened to the public. And I just want to say, too, the Western Nebraska Observer newspaper in Kimball, I believe it's a weekly paper now, but it's still open. I think it always has been a weekly. I don't know enough about the history of the paper, but it's
interesting.
It's still there.
Huh, that's very interesting.
I believe it's a 2 or 3 man operation. I know they have one reporter and an editor / publisher, but
they got a little thing like that at Mitchell too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The Mitchell Index closed. It was, I'm not going to go there. I'm just not going to go there. After 100 years, that paper closed. I'm just going to say it should not have closed. And now some folks have started something else back up.
Again, a very small operation. I only know the one lady because she pops in randomly, even here in town. Does small little columns for the college for anything and backs up. So it's pretty nice. Yeah.
So, I think people are finally starting to realize how vital your hometown newspaper is. So, Monday evening, about 200 people of Kimball enjoyed a dance in the dining room. On account of our present light service, the grand opening, which Mr. Cunningham had planned, will have to be postponed indefinitely. The new hotel is a great addition to Kimball, and it is safe to say that Kimball people appreciate it. The furniture, carpets, and in fact the hotel as a whole is equal to those of the large cities. The cost completed will likely reach near $100,000, the result of Kimball County wheat raised on Mr. Cunningham's farms. Mr. Cunningham made a success as the largest wheat grower in the state of Nebraska, and we believe he will be equally successful as manager of the largest hotel in western Nebraska, excepting only the new Lincoln in Scotts Bluff. So I know what you're thinking, Connor, and I know what you're probably doing on your phone.
What's that? What am I typing?
How much is that $100,000 worth?
Yeah.
Okay, I looked it up this time. Yep.
Oh, damn,
I knew as soon as we were getting to the $100,000 mark, I go, and he quietly pulled his phone out. I'm like, he wants to know how much it is.
I always want to know how much it is because that really sounds like a sneeze in the bucket nowadays. But of course, that's not how much it is now.
Right, and we're going to get to money amounts a little later, and I looked those up too for you. Wow. So that $100,000 in 2018 is $2,303,686.13 today.
For a hotel in Kimball.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And it had 86 rooms, so that gives you an idea of, size and furnishings and stuff.
And for those who haven't, I always take a little laugh at Kimball, and you cannot help it. When you go past Kimball, and right as you're going out, there's a hardware store, a gun store, and an alcohol store all jammed together in one big store. I think it literally says hardware, liquor, and guns. If there isn't anything more Nebraska redneck, I do not know if it exists. You have to go there to see it. It's a sight. You just shake your head like, wait, what?
And since they bought that bypass, or built the bypass, a lot of people don't go through Kimball anymore.
You're right, they don't.
But we do. Every time we do go that way, I will ask Paul, through town or not, and he's like, through town, because he loves the quaintness.
It has a beautiful downtown. Yeah. Although, I must say, how everyone this year got festive? Mm-hmm. Kimball did not.
Oh.
No, I didn't see any really lights or any real setups, and I thought they used to. I don't know if they just didn't decide to this year, but there was of course some fancy houses that were dolled up, but the main streets weren't this year. It was interesting.
Wonder why. Okay. Yeah. So at the time, people noted that the hotel was the finest and most glamorous hotel between Omaha and Denver.
The only hotel between Omaha and Denver.
It not only boasted an elegant ballroom, but a restaurant as well. In 1919, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, his wife Mamie, their son Doug, and Mamie's parents stayed at the hotel.
Why did they stop there?
Well...
That was too scripted, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. You're supposed to make it a little more...
Why did they stop there?
See, we're still learning how to do this. So Eisenhower was taking part in a cross-country road trip experiment to test gas vehicles as a means for moving Army equipment. He, his family, and other Army officers headed west on this trip, and when rain and mud fell down on the area, it forced them to take overnight refuge in Kimball. So that's why they stayed at the hotel. And I don't know if y'all know, our highway system throughout the United States is called the Eisenhower highway system.
And this is the like president or future president?
No, he was president at the
this
time.
Okay.
So I'm not going to get into it, but if you go on the hotel's website, they also have some more details about that trip and its importance to the United States. But basically, Eisenhower wanted a better way to move troops and equipment around in the U.S.
Yep.
And so he was like, if we build roads, will this work? And so he was like, I'm going to go because I want to see for myself. And so he got stuck in rain and mud in Kimball and had to spend the night. And it did become more efficient. And I'll get to that in a minute. But there's a reason why our United States highway system is the Eisenhower system, and it's because of this. So you can go to the Wheat Grower Hotel's website, read the documentation, and use that as a jumping off point because that's a nation thing, not a Western Nebraska thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's
just as important as the Oregon Trail. It really is.
Yes. So Frank Cunningham, so we finally get to know what Mr. Cunningham's first name is. Frank.
Boo.
Boo.
I was expecting something much better.
What were you expecting?
I don't know. Not Frank.
I wonder if it was short for Franklin. Would that be a little better hoity-toity for you, Franklin?
More, you need to be a bit more hoity-toity. I don't know why you cut that down to Frank.
I don't know. Because all the Franks I've known were Franklins, but they were called Frank. Yeah. Anyway, so Frank Cunningham was one of the largest wheat growers in the state, and he made sure the crop was front and center at the hotel. From the name to the tiled wheat in the lobby to a threshing mural by Andy Borgeson Sr., you can't miss the significance of wheat to Cunningham in the state. And so his two main crops that he worked with was potatoes and wheat. And
good crops to grow out here for the most part.
Yeah. So the 86-room hotel is significant to the Kimball area because of its association to commercial development in town. It was also a part of the building boom that was going on across the state at the time. Because of the sugar beet crop?
Is that part of the sugar boom?
Part of the sugar boom, part of the whole growing boom, buildings, ag, everything. Yeah, just kind of everything at the same time. The railroad, and I'll get to it here in just a second, but the railroad expansion, the roads expansion, there was just a boom in general going across the state. And he was taking advantage of it, which is good. And because of World War I, a lot of the wheat that he grew went to the war effort. So he made quite a bit of money doing that as well. The Wheat Growers Hotel was typical of the day. It was made of brick and was multi-story and offered all the modern conveniences to businessmen who frequently traveled on the railroad. Yes, I read this before I wrote it, but that just had a bunch of consonants shoved together that I stumbled on, and I don't know why. The Wheat Growers Hotel quickly became a hub for businessmen and travelers along the railroad. It was built in the early commercial style, and the hotel benefited from both the Union Pacific Railway line expansion and the Lincoln Highway running through Kimball. And that road still runs through Kimball.
Yeah. It's my favorite road.
Granted, what is it? I don't know, like a quarter of a mile away? At best is I-80, but the Lincoln Highway still goes through town.
You go through the town, you go under Highway 80, and then that'll take you all the way to a bypass that will take you out to Colorado or out to Wyoming.
Yep. So the Lincoln Highway reached through the village of Kimball around 1913 at the same time as the rail expansion, and with car and rail traffic, people needed a place to stop and rest between Ogallala, Nebraska, and Cheyenne, Wyoming. Now today, from Kimball to Cheyenne, it's 45 minutes by car? Because it's an hour and a half from here. It's about 45 minutes by car. Not quite sure how far down the road Ogallala is, but
Ogallala and Cheyenne is pretty far.
Yeah, but you could still do it in a day today.
Oh, today.
In 1913? No. So this is another advantage to having this hotel here because, oh my God, I'm tired. My car does like 25 miles an hour or whatever.
30 at best.
And I'm tired of driving. This is a good place to stop. It's a good stopping place. So according to the application for the hotel on the historic register, so it is listed on the Register of Historic Places, the 20,000 square foot rectangular building has a concrete foundation and a flat asphalt roof with a parapet. Decorative features include polychromatic brickwork in the hotel's windows and door surrounds, a cornice with corbelled modillions, and a dropped crosshatch motif on the corner ends. And when I read this,
take that.
When I was reading this,
doesn't that sound wonderful?
Yeah, I'm reading this and I'm going, I hope Connor knows what this is because I don't understand.
You would have to point it out.
Yeah.
And I'd be like, oh, yeah, of course, that's what that is.
Yeah.
I knew that.
Yeah. Oh, I knew what that was.
Of course, everybody knows what those are
called. Of course, people know what polychromatic brickwork is. I cut and pasted it here solely for the people that are interested in that kind of stuff, and so you can go look it up yourself. The hotel, and mainly because I ran out of time to really go look and see what that is, and then spend time explaining what it is. The hotel's exterior displays the words Wheat Growers Hotel in white brick relief in a frieze below the cornice on the east and north elevations. The east elevation features two large second-story window openings that historically contained leaded stained glass windows with wheat shocks and the words Wheat Growers. And if I remember correctly, a wheat shock is, when it's standing up and it's got the little bit of stuff. To me, it's a bundle.
It's a bundle, yeah.
Yeah, but apparently it's officially called a wheat shock. Okay. The leaded stained glass windows were damaged by a hailstorm sometime after 1948 and were replaced. The openings are currently boarded over. So at the time this was put on the historic register, they had boarded over the window spots.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. We don't want them getting more damage. Let the hail hit a hunk of wood over the window. The west elevation or rear of the building has a fire escape, a service entrance, and windows with no ornamental details. And reading these things when you put stuff on the historic register reminds me of when I bought my house because they have to write in this kind of language as well. Mm-hmm. Like the east eave, needs to be painted or whatever. They have to write in that technical specific language. Mm-hmm. Whereas when I talk to the guy will be like, see that up there? You need to paint that, and that's as far as it goes. But I've read enough of these now that I don't know what any of these words mean, but they all have meaning. And if I was really into architecture, I'd be like, oh my God, that's so cool.
Oh, yeah.
But it's just not a thing that I even have any. One, I don't have an interest in architecture for the most part. I appreciate the beauty of the things that are built, mm-hmm. but I'm not interested in architecture in the sense of, do we need this kind of column or that kind of column? Those kind of things just don't interest me. But
and that kind of shows you a lot what happened here out west is, one, we didn't have the material, and two, the Rockefellers and the and all those, the Astors, also, the Astors actually came out here a bit, but for the most part, the Astors stayed in New York. Mm-hmm. Well, everybody stayed in New York, and they never really ventured this far.
Yeah.
They didn't care much to do about it, and everyone here is pretty practical.
Yeah.
So we do have fancy things. Don't get me wrong, I find the architecture here quite beautiful, but it was still very practical. It wasn't over the top.
Yes. And for me, when I was living in Poughkeepsie, I grew up about an hour and a half from Hyde Park, New York, where the Roosevelt family home is. And the Vanderbilts had a house there. Eleanor Roosevelt has her own separate house up there. There's, all of those rich people had houses up in Hyde Park. And when I lived in Poughkeepsie, Hyde Park was like 5 miles away. yeah, the houses are kind of cool to look at, but man, the stories that are inside the house was what I went for,
always
that I
more
loved.
fascinating. Learning about the Gilded Age and all
Yeah.
that. Very, very
So
fascinating.
those big houses that you were just talking about, they never attracted me. But I could go stand and look at the Wheat Growers Hotel for a good long while because it is simple and practical, but useful and beautiful at the same time. Whereas those houses back in New York were meant to display their opulence. We got money. Look, we got these
got
nice
things,
columns that are pretty pointless.
And we tried to do big, which is a general thing about the false facades out here that you generally see in the Wild West. You know, your typical saloon scenes where you have this little box, but the outside facade makes it look so much bigger.
Yeah.
You know, it's very typical Western thing. You see it all the time. You even see it in some of the old towns out here. But that was generally the idea. And then even, you know, by the time, you know, Scotts Bluff kind of came around and was more built like you see it today, it wasn't necessarily about being super tall versus just efficient because it was cold and there's only so many ways to heat a building. And when you get to you know, the Lincoln Hotel, the expense was way more to keep a place like that warm versus most of the shorter buildings around here. So yeah, there's lots of practical ideas went into this town where it wasn't, you know, opulence came later. And like I said, it came in false facades. You look at the Midwest Theater. It's a perfect example of that. It's a pretty plain building, and they just dulled it up with all this ridiculous Art Nouveau shapes and bright neon lights and big spiky balls that make no sense whatsoever. And, you know, it's just to be pretty, but
But it
that's
looks
what
pretty,
we
yeah.
Looks
And it's
pretty.
the same with like your big plantation houses down in the South. It's ridiculously hot. There was no air conditioning. And a lot of times when you walk in the front door of a plantation house, you can see straight out the back door. Well, that was for airflow.
Yep.
And it wasn't until later that we got away from that, to the point that when I went to the Netherlands, at first I didn't realize how tightly packed people were, but every room has a door. So, you know, like my living room is open to the kitchen. No, there would be a wall there in the Netherlands because of the way they had to heat the homes.
Yeah.
If you're not in the living room, we ain't heating it. So close the door. The heat staying in the kitchen, that's where we're at. So the homes and the way they're built there is very practical. And in the South, you wanted lots and lots of windows, lots of, you know, the air comes in the front door and out the back door, and, you know, cross flowing. So if your window is open in this room, it should be open in that room. And I've even seen some plantation houses that have doorways because you need to get into the next room. But like right here, this doorway here, there's no door there because we don't need a door. And in the South, if you put a door there, well, now you're blocking the airflow. And you want as much air flowing in your house as you want in 110-degree weather in Louisiana. You know? So we built practical here, what we needed here. And big was expensive. And if you didn't need it, then you're not going to make all that extra stuff. So the west elevation or rear of the building has a fire escape, a service entrance, and windows, and no ornamental details. The interior of the Wheat Growers Hotel features an open 2-story lobby located between 2 staircases that lead to the second story. The lobby floor has red, black, and green tile with decorative diamond patterns and an inlaid shock of wheat. A mural by local artist Andy Borgeson Jr. is located on the second floor wall above the entryway and features a wheat threshing scene. And I go into detail about this because it's really, we'll get to it in a bit, but it's difficult to access the hotel today, and you need permission from the owners. So I want to read as much of a description of what it looked like inside, because even you or I are going to, I mean, if I still worked for the paper and I wanted to go do a story on the history of that hotel, I could easily get access to it and have the owner show me around for that purpose. But just me going down there and saying, dude, I want to learn about the hotel, will you let me in? It's probably not going to happen.
You never know.
You
got to buy him dinner first. You got to butter him up.
And I have heard, depending on the day and when you catch the owner, he may give you a detailed tour and a detailed history. So
I do find that fascinating about the people out here that own these places. They're usually, if you ask, they're willing to tell you. It's just not a lot of people ask.
Yeah, that's the whole mentality of our society today is, oh, that's rude to ask. And
you never know.
And my grandma always taught me the worst someone can say is no, and respect it. You know, so if they say no, you can't go in the hotel, don't break in later and go in the hotel. So the hotel was constructed with 86 guest rooms, accessed by 2 hallways on each floor. The rooms were arranged in a straight line along each hallway with interior and exterior rooms. The rooms were steam heated and featured sinks with hot and cold running water. Exterior rooms had window views with bathrooms shared by 2 adjacent rooms. Interior rooms were ventilated by 4 air shafts. Guests stayed in the interior rooms, Guests staying in interior rooms shared a common bathroom on each floor. So this is a big deal out here, and this is a big deal to me because growing up in New York, Martin Van Buren, one of our former presidents, had a home in Kinderhook. He was born and raised there. Been to his house, toured his house, and it was a big deal. He had running water and flushable toilets. And if I remember correctly, I think his house was the first in the state that had that. So 1913, having this is a big deal in your hotel.
Definitely.
That's a huge deal. And when I read that, I thought, okay, right there, that qualifies for you to be on the historic register because that's not a common thing even in 1913.
It's also kind of similar in the Hotel Denver in Glenwood Springs, where Doc Holliday died. Fun history fact was something similar to that. They had hot running water. That was because, of course, they had the springs next to them. So I think they actually had hot water a little earlier.
Okay.
But yeah,
but
very interesting thing to have hot water.
Yeah. So a living area for the hotel's proprietors, additional bathrooms and showers were added sometime after 1948, reducing the number of guest rooms to 73. So it had 86, so you're taking 13 rooms off so that the family can live there. So if you can, just make a general guess about a small hotel room, how much space that is, because I didn't find any details of how much space that was.
If there anything like I remember from like the Hotel Denver and some of the other old hotels that me and my husband have tried to stay into, they're not. I guess they're bigger than you think, smaller than you think in some ways. I've often noticed that they're a decent sized room also with large ceilings. So they're often tall, not so much large, but the tall gives the illusion that it's large.
Ah, okay.
I found that a lot, especially like in the Hotel Denver. That's the way it was. It wasn't a necessarily big room, but it was very, very tall. The ceiling was, at least 15 feet to your normal 10. So yeah.
Okay. So yeah, work with what you got and create the illusion that it's bigger. Like a lighter colored room makes the room appear bigger. So, okay. A third staircase along the far north wall of the lobby leads downstairs to the ballroom, kitchen, and laundry facilities in the basement of the hotel. The ballroom features arched ceiling supports and small rectangular basement windows. Separate rooms in the western third of the basement house the kitchen and laundry areas. A small, circa 1975 concrete block addition on the north elevation was used to store packages when the building offered Greyhound bus service. A ticket counter and small office located at the south end of the lobby were also added at this time. A non-contributing circa 1945 gabled roof frame garage sits to the southwest of the hotel. So while the hotel was a celebrated marvel, Cunningham's financial empire collapsed, and with it, everything changed for this hotel, this poor hotel. The Denver Dry Goods Company repossessed all the hotel furnishings. The state savings and loan of Beatrice foreclosed on the property, everything, including a lot of the plumbing, was stripped from the hotel and it got boarded up. So part of the hotel's closure kind of sucks to me. And I'm going to quote here from the Western Nebraska Observer edition of May 2nd, 1985, which was their centennial edition paper. 1923, Frank Cunningham, wheat and potato farmer and owner of the Wheat Growers Hotel, was under bond, waiting trail, and I left that in there. It should be waiting trial, but that's a permanent mistake in the newspaper.
Trail.
On a charge of obtaining money under false pretense. The Building and Loan Association of Beatrice had foreclosed on the hotel, and Cunningham had made arrangements to pay for the coal to keep it open. He drew money to pay for the coal, but paid an old coal bill by mistake instead of buying the coal to be used. He entered a plea of not guilty and it was bound over to district court, and that case would be dismissed in another 2 months. And then 1924, Frank Cunningham, at one time the greatest wheat raiser in the West, had filed petition in bankruptcy. During the war, Cunningham reportedly made over $100,000 raising wheat here. So he made money during the war raising wheat and then built the hotel and thought he could build upon that. And, you know, this is 102 years ago now. It seems like an honest mistake that he grabbed a bill for coal and paid the bill a second time instead of paying for the coal, which was the arrangement he had made with the bank so that the place didn't get foreclosed. So it just seems like it was some kind of stupid screw-up, but it's a stupid legal screw-up, and it cost him dearly and the hotel. So the hotel closed for a short time but reopened in 1926 with 17 rooms available to rent, which were re-equipped for use. Eventually, all 86 rooms reopened and was prepared for the daily 26 trains that stopped in town in the late 1920s. So he doesn't own the hotel anymore, but, you know, he had sold the hotel in 1925 to the Moore family, so the hotel's still open at this place. Vern Moore and his wife Gladys Naomi Hollett moved to Kimball in 1927, and Vern managed the hotel for his dad. I couldn't find out who his dad was because I guess his dad bought the hotel for the family, and then his son, Vern, came out here 2 years later to manage the place.
Gotcha.
So it's still all in the family. And his wife Gladys did most of the cooking, and she was renowned for her pies. Everybody wanted to eat her pie. So I'm guessing the restaurant did well, because even if you go there just for a slice of pie, you're making money. The 1920s brought increased prosperity and growth to Kimball and Kimball County. By 1920, the population of Kimball County was 4,498, and the population of Kimball was 1,620. And those typos you see there, Connor, are on the website. Yeah. Somebody needs to go fix those on the website.
1620Q.
Yeah. there's a little 16 there for whatever reason. Having between 800 and 5,000 people, Kimball became a city in 1922, thereby disbanding the village government and electing the first mayor. Seed potatoes, sugar beets, and wheat were important and profitable crops in the 1920s. They still are today. Potatoes are more north of us, not down in Kimball anymore.
So but potatoes, but sugar beets and wheat, absolutely.
Yeah. Despite the black rust, which destroyed much of the wheat crop in 1923, the 3 grain elevators in Kimball shipped $3 million of wheat in 1927. I forgot to look that up, but
what's that? The black rust?
No, I forgot to look the black rust up as well, but I'm pretty sure that was probably.
I'm pretty sure that was a fungal.
Yeah.
Could have been a virus or a bacteria, but I'm pretty sure it was fungal.
Yeah, that
fungal related.
That killed the wheats. And the $3 million in 1927, I forgot to look up how much that is, but it's if 100,000 was 3 million, you know, this is hundreds of millions of dollars in wheat in 1927. Lumber companies reported record sales due to increased construction in the late 1920s, and many automotive-related businesses opened, including at least 6 service stations. And if I remember correctly, there's 2 in Kimball now. Maybe 3 on the far eastern part of town, but right there on that main strip, there's only 1. That other one closed. So, but to have 6 service stations in a town of less than 4,500, that's saying you're doing a lot of business and a lot of people are coming through here.
And that really was the big thing, I think, too. So a lot of people came through.
Yeah. So during Prohibition, which lasted until 1933, it was 1920 to 33, it was also rumored to have, the hotel was also rumored to have a tunnel beneath the hotel to make the transportation of illegal alcohol easier. According to most locals, the tunnel ran between the hotel's kitchen and a nearby speakeasy. The tunnel also wasn't entirely safe, as a woman who worked in the speakeasy became trapped in the tunnel and died, and her spirit is supposedly still there. And
See, I didn't know that. That'd be fun. I wonder where the speakeasy was and adjacent to the hotel.
Yeah.
See that.
And we did cover the dead lady in our last October in our Halloween episodes. And that's been, I don't want to say rumored, because the head of the department, whatever it's called here in Scottsbluff, that's in charge of all the construction and stuff for the city, his name's Mark Bowl. Mark told me that he always believed that it was rumors in Scottsbluff that there were tunnels. And then remember when they took the stoplights out downtown? Mm-hmm. He said when they were redoing the pavement, when they did that, there were parts of the road that collapsed because it was above where those tunnels were. And he goes, oh yeah, those tunnels were absolutely real. And I was
and why not?
Yeah. And he had told me absolutely I could go check them out. But he hadn't gotten permission from the city and from the mayor yet. And then I left the paper, so I never got a chance to see them.
Just to see maybe where they were. I wouldn't be surprised if some ran under the Lincoln Hotel. Wouldn't be surprised at all.
Yeah, there are ones downtown, and I did a story series called What's Upstairs Downtown for What's Downtown Broadway. And I want to say it was the Blue Stem, but I'm not sure. It's across from the bar that is now Oasis, the one that changes names every 6 months. And there was a tunnel between the two, because that building up on the top floor, there were 2 apartments where some young ladies lived. And so you don't want to get caught drinking alcohol, and you don't want to get caught going to a brothel. So you went to the tunnel underneath there.
Oh, gotcha.
And so I have been down to the door area where that tunnel was, but it's all blocked and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I know Alliance used to give tours of their tunnels. So even though the locals talk about the tunnels, and I don't even know where they're at in Kimball, I believe they're there, because I know they're here in other towns.
Yeah.
So maybe one day when I'm rich and have lots and lots of time, I'll go investigate all the tunnels out here. Maybe somebody's already done it and wrote a book, and I just don't know about it yet. Who knows?
It would be interesting. There's definitely some YouTubers that do excellent documentaries about like Chicago's underground and New York's underground and everything that was used for. So I bet they would find it pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
Just try to get a hold of them.
Yeah, and say, hey, dudes, come do a documentary.
So we'll see what you can dig up.
Yeah. Things took a downward turn again in the 1930s as the effects of the Great Depression and the Dust Bowl hit the area. You could still eat at the hotel restaurant and eat well. So a noon plate lunch was 35 cents. That's $8.06 in 2025. So you could get lunch for $8 at that hotel, which that's not a bad lunch today.
No, not at all.
A T-bone steak dinner complete with dessert was 65 cents. That's $14.97 for a T-bone steak dinner cooked for you with dessert.
Yep. And you know that's a Nebraska cow
Yes. Yep.
Probably was just down the way.
Yeah, it was probably just down the road. Inside rooms were $1 per night, which is $23.04 today. Outside rooms were $1.50, which is $34.56 in 2025. A double room was $2, which is $46.07. Unless you were a man traveling with your wife, then you got the special rate of $1.50. So yeah, I'm not even worth $1. So if you stay in a double room with another man, you both got to pay $1. But I'm only worth 50 cents.
What was the outside room though compared to an inside room? What do you mean outside?
The outside rooms had windows.
Oh.
And the inside rooms didn't.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm worth half what you're worth, Connor. And yeah, I'm going to harp on that. I'm kind of ticked about that.
Okay. Of all the things you could be mad about.
I know. But again, I'm worth half what you're worth.
What? You're giving me a discount? Dare you?
And what's really sad is I'm going to be 55 in July. I could go get the old people menu at the restaurant. But that's different because it's all old people get that price. It's not just the old women. So anyway, from 1945 to 1964, T.I. Tom Dutch and Chuck and Hester Mary Halstead owned the Wheat Growers Hotel. That's my summation of two different sources. One said T.I. Dutch. The other one said Chuck Halstead and his father-in-law Dutch, or his father-in-law Tom. Again, same information. People are writing it two different ways. Wish y'all would write things the same way all the time. In 1949, a massive blizzard hit the area and the hotel was packed. I did go gather some things about the 49 blizzard, but that's going to be a longer episode for another time because I don't just want. Nasty one. Yeah, I don't just want to do Kimball or just do Scottsbluff. I want to do the whole Panhandle.
And what happened? Infamous Black Blizzard.
Yes, right? Yeah.
The one that killed those children in the schoolhouse. And, yeah,
and unfortunately, I'm going to give y'all a warning right now. If you go to the Wheat Growers Hotel website and you read their history stuff and you click on read the history of the blizzard, it has scanned in pictures of an article from Life magazine, and the very first picture is a cow, and I'm like, oh, the cow's covered in snow. I read the caption, cow froze to death standing up. I'm like, thank you for putting a dead cow on the cover of your magazine. I did not want to see that. Nebraska. But that is, I'm like, after I got done being upset, I'm like, yeah, that is very Nebraska. Yep. Yeah. But just a forewarning that that's going to be the first picture that pops up at you.
It's a nasty event.
Yes. So Life magazine printed a story about the stranded passengers in which they said even at night the hotel lobby was full because there wasn't enough rooms to hold all the people. And so the other pictures do have, they're good pictures. It's just please don't put the cow as your first one. The hotel just let them hang out inside. Most of the passengers were headed to California, and thus they were inappropriately dressed for the weather.
So these people are coming by the train by this point, just so people are kind of wondering, what were they stagecoached here now? They probably took the train. The train probably got blocked by the blizzard.
Yes, and there is a picture of the train, and the caption had a little explanation about why it couldn't keep going.
And again, I think I might have talked about these before, but if you're ever out here and you see what looked like giant planks, almost they look like old signs that were tipped over and there's nothing but the rafters left, that are on purpose. They're called snow gates. And they were purposely used to drift the snow away from the railroad tracks and to make huge drifts so it wouldn't come down on the tracks. That was a later invention from what I understand. And of course, nowadays, we don't get enough snow, so you don't really see them in action. They're just kind of skeletons, weird things out in the landscape that you see.
You're like, what is that?
Yep.
So I'm going to read something that's written on the hotel's website, just so if you want to go check it out, you can check it out yourself. Sunday morning, January 2nd, 1949, a strong wind was blowing in Kimball. In the afternoon, it started to snow, and by evening, a full-fledged blizzard was in progress. Monday morning drifts blocked all the streets in the city. The snow and biting wind were so strong a person could hardly see his hand in front of his face. The temperature was dropping too, and by afternoon it was down to 5 degrees below zero. That's Fahrenheit for our foreign listeners. Can't talk today. The Union Pacific Streamliner had been stopped because another stopped train. We're missing a word there. The train was stopped because another train was stopped and couldn't get through. On Tuesday morning, the diesel units had lost their power and could no longer supply heat for the train. I still see people occasionally, not in the last couple of winters, but when I first moved here, I saw people with diesel vehicles. They had them little heaters, and you saw the extension cord coming out of their house because it was going to drop to like 5 below. And diesel does not work in cold weather. Few of the passengers had boots or heavy coats, so they had to be carried to the adjacent wheat growers' hotel. At the hotel, people slept in shifts in the beds, chairs, lounged on spare mattresses, This is I read it last night and I was like, I'm not going to get tripped up by the crappy writing, and I'm getting tripped up by the crappy writing. At the hotel, people slept in shifts in the beds, chairs, lounged, and on spare mattresses spread on the floor in the basement dormitory that they had made. I would have rewritten that sentence a different way so it flowed better. The dining car crew from the Streamliner helped prepare meals, working around the clock. In the 1950s and 1970s, the oil business found their way to town. In the 60s, people were here to work with the missile bases. In 64, Mr. and Mrs. A. Blaine Jackson purchased the hotel. And I don't really know much information about them, just that they bought the hotel. Unfortunately, that much celebrated trip by Eisenhower would also contribute to the decline of the hotel. With the advent of the highway system, originally meant to be able to move troops and equipment quickly, also saw the rise of the personal car. A hotel near the railroad wasn't needed anymore.
Nope, just blow on by.
Yep. Marty and Susie Barr purchased the hotel around 1983. I saw a couple of places where it said sometime in the 1980s, and then I saw an article that said sometime in 1983, so circa 1983 they bought the hotel. And on an earlier version of the hotel's website history page, Naomi Barr Roberts sent in a memory of her time at the hotel. So that is on the Wayback Machine. I went back and was reading that because I also like seeing how websites have changed over time. Mm-hmm. The hotel website is much better today. At the time that Naomi had come across the website, plans were being made to renovate the hotel, but her letter is undated, so we just have some clues. I'm not sure. Maybe if you could find Naomi, you could ask her when she wrote the letter, but it doesn't matter because it's a neat little memory. So I drove through Kimball in 2002 as I moved with my 3 sons from Portland, Oregon to Columbus, Ohio. I was devastated by the way the hotel, had been let go and vandalized. When we lived there in the early 1980s, it was a thriving and beautiful hotel. How exciting to see it has gained new interest. I hope you are able to renovate and restore the hotel. My family owned and operated the wheat growers in the early 1980s. My parents who owned it are Marty and Susie Barr, who now live in Beaverton, Michigan. And then at the time, the editor had a note that Susie passed away just last December. Our condolences to Marty, Naomi, and the rest of the family. So if you're looking to historically date this letter, just go do it. You got all the information. It doesn't matter for Naomi's nice little memory here. We lived in the hotel while we owned and ran it and could tell you lots of stories. We even ran the restaurant for a short time. My mom was well known in town for her donuts and brownies that she made and sold to Kimball businesses every morning. Some people may also remember that we used to make crock pots full of bean soup and sell it in the lobby along with Mom's donuts and brownies. We also had vending machines that we sold sandwiches, burritos, and other snacks in. And man, I miss those automats, those vending machines where you could walk up, oh my God, hot grilled cheese sandwich. Here's my quarter hot grilled cheese sandwich. Or
it's all that's gone. And, and they always talked about how we become kind of more Japan-like with their vending machine systems. And if you ever seen them, I mean, they're amazing because you can get everything in a Japanese vending machine. I really thought we'd get there one day in some way, shape, or form. And I remember they still had these automats, and you pop it out, you'd have a fresh hot something. But man, now you're lucky to get, like, there was a gas station that did noodle in a cup. That was pretty. Oh, that was probably the most impressive thing that I've seen recently.
I know when I used to travel in the Netherlands in the 90s, they had them at the train stations, and I'm trying to remember. Kaas's cheese in Dutch. I forget what it is. It wasn't a cheese Danish, but oh my God, it was so good. And every single train station I stopped at, I'm like, oh, do you have one? Oh, and I would buy one. And they had those automats everywhere. I don't know if they do anymore because, like everything, my friends and I grew up, and the Netherlands is not a big country, and they typically pick me up at the airport now. So I don't do a lot of train riding when I do get to visit them in the Netherlands. So they may still have them, they may not, but I love them. It's great because you've got a nice little hot meal that was cooked. And at the time, it probably wasn't too processed. It was probably minimally processed. Like if you were going to bake me a cheese Danish, you're going to make it from scratch. But it's still sort of technically minimally processed.
Exactly.
But they were really good. I miss those things. I really wish we still had those. So back to Naomi's story. I have a memory of cheating and putting extra meat on the sandwiches. Dad had a scale that we were supposed to weigh the meat, and I always put on more than I was supposed to. I laughed when I read this because when I was a shift manager at Taco Bell back in the early 90s, I had my favorite customers. You got a little more something. Yeah, you got extra cheese on your taco. Yeah, you betcha. And
especially if they're nice.
Yeah.
If you got that relationship and people that come back time after time, I always usually try to make it a little more special for them than I would maybe someone else. I don't know if that's the right attitude to have, but
we had a guy that came in every single day, 2 bean burritos and a small Pepsi. And if I was working lunch and I saw him come in, I would run up to the register and promo out his soda.
Yeah. We do something. We do some similar stuff with some of the people I work with because they're just amazing.
Yeah,
they've been there forever, and of course we're going to help them out.
Yep. Know? And for at least 10 years, every day for lunch, that guy came, 2 bean burritos and a small Pepsi. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I'm gonna.
Mark, a lot of those people live forever. By the way, I was always amazed as a kid. We used to have the McDonald's in Walmart. Mm-hmm. Like McDonald's, but there are always these older gentlemen every morning that I swear I could probably still see today, and they didn't eat unhealthily because all they got was their coffee.
Yeah, it was their coffee time.
It's probably like an egg McMuffin at most, maybe a hash brown, and maybe some orange juice, but they would never eat anything more unhealthy than that. That was it. But they would do that every morning.
Yep.
Every morning. It was incredible.
Yep. I lost my place here with Naomi. Oh, we also had, I think, 3 bus lines that ran there. I was young, but if I recall, they were Star, Greyhound, and another line. We had overnight guests as well as guests who lived there. It is funny what an impact that a hotel had on us as a kid. My sister and I just talked about it yesterday. I wish you the best of luck, and we'll keep an eye on the website to see how things develop. So, she didn't have to write in.
Yeah. Three bus lines. That's amazing. There isn't a single bus line, I think, that goes through Kimball now, is there?
No. And when I worked at Nebraska Bookstore in Lincoln, 99, I know I worked with a young man who was dating a Lakota lady, and they were going back to, they were going to see her parents and then to the reservation, and I think her parents were in Chadron, so they had to come out here on the bus. And I do know she did eventually become a lawyer, and she lives up in Chadron, and he became a lawyer, and they're married now, so yay. But he told me this horrific story of how, because they didn't have a car at the time, of how they're like, half of our trip was just getting out there and getting back because the bus made so many stops. And now I would be surprised if Greyhound even stopped out in Kimball at all. Because if Greyhound doesn't go anyplace else in the state, I don't even know if there's a bus stop in Lincoln anymore. And
there is in Lincoln.
Okay.
And there is in Sioux Falls. I think it's called the Franklin bus.
Okay.
And I know that because my buddy has come out that way using that bus system a few times. Here we used to have the Denver coach.
Yep.
And I don't know if we still do anymore.
No, it died, was resurrected, and I think it's permanently dead now.
Yeah. Very hard to make money.
Yeah. There is some kind of weird bus that travels between Scotts Bluff and Alliance, and I don't quite understand it, and it's not something I need, so I didn't invest a lot of time in trying to figure it out. But it's just really hard to make things like that work here, which is why I'm glad the city here has their little bus system, and it's thriving.
Yeah, which we just got very recently.
Yeah,
we never had public transport like we have now. That's incredible. I think it's done a lot of good for the city.
Yeah. It started, I want to say 2018 or 19, because I left the paper in June of 2019, and it was running then. I just can't remember how long it was running. And since then, they've expanded a couple of lines too. And I see people. You can
get just about anywhere now in town using that bus.
Yep. So they are beneficial, but to have 3 bus lines go through Kimball, again, signifies how important that town was.
Yeah, and they were big, like, Star, Greyhound.
Yeah.
Those are big bus lines.
Yes. So the hotel closed its doors in 1988.
Oh, the year I was born.
Oh, it's the year I graduated.
Never make it.
Connor, that's the year I graduated high school.
I know, you're old.
I walked right into that one.
It's okay. I have a similar thing with my godchild, I believe, was born the year I graduated. And now it's just like, she's almost graduating.
Yeah. You're like, oh, now I am old. In some ways it sucks, but in some ways it's like July 5th is my birthday. You know I'm going to Perkins and reading off the old menu. I don't even like Perkins. I'm going to go get something off the old menu just because I can.
Well, yeah, you don't got Sherry's no more.
Yeah,
you got all the good famous places to get your good old veteran, or not veterans, senior discount.
Yeah. I much preferred Cherries over Perkins.
I did back in the day, yeah.
Yeah, I'm sad that place is gone too. So in 2000, Ed Avila purchased the hotel for back property taxes, and Avila was instrumental in getting the hotel added to the National Registry of Historic Sites in 2002.
So you don't have to worry about any other taxes.
Yeah.
That's not the reason he did it at all.
No. So what's so important that you want to keep this building? Well, according to the history section on the hotel website, the marble stairway in the dining room and ballroom and the twin staircases going to the upper floor were the height of elegance. The architecture of the structure has several usual features. The 4 ventilator shafts provided both light and air to the inside rooms. The heating system concentrates on heating the exterior rooms so that the cold could not penetrate to the interior rooms, which did not have heat. The intended clientele were those who traveled by rail, salesmen, developers, investors, and travelers. The railroad at that time was the main transportation link for people as well as freight, and travel by car was still a novelty.
Yeah.
And
I think I mentioned that before, why buses stayed so long, like right up into the later 80s, is because, cars, we had them, but they weren't It's not like nowadays when you go to Scottsbluff. I don't know how many auto dealers we have here. It's a ridiculous number.
It's way too ridiculous. Yeah.
It's more than our schools and almost as much as our churches.
Yeah.
It's kind of the joke. But like back in the day, who knows if you had any?
Yeah.
You probably had to order your car from Sears, and who knows when it got here.
Or maybe the dealership was in Cheyenne or Denver or Lincoln.
Or
those
some
are your
bigger
options.
city,
yeah. And there's a reason why there's the saying, the family car. Mm-hmm. Because you had one car.
Oh, yeah. You didn't have...
Three people...
It wasn't like me growing up where and both my sisters, we all had cars.
Yeah, everybody has their own cars now.
It's completely... I think that was ridiculous. It probably wasn't needed to be that way. But, it was more my mom wanted to treat us all equal.
Yes.
I love you, Mom. I'm proud of you. It made parking very interesting when your dad was a paramedic, your mom was a cop, and then you had the family car in general that they used, and then each of us had a car. So it made parking quite a nightmare.
And you
for
live
us
on the
and our
avenues.
neighbors.
Yeah.
That's what our neighbors kind of did a little fisticuffs a couple of times with our parking arrangements. So, yeah.
And for those of you that don't know Scottsbluff and its history, the avenues are still well sought after houses, places to live, but they weren't built with cars in mind. No, they're not.
They really are your typical, if envision your just came back from the war, your perfect little white picket houses kind of avenues. That's really what they were.
Yeah.
I mean, very tight avenues, all in lines and very grid patterned.
Unless I happen to be at your house for something, I avoid the avenues. I don't even like driving on Fifth Avenue.
They're very dangerous because of where they do and don't put stop signs.
Yes, yeah.
So almost everybody in my family actually has been in a car accident down those avenues.
Oh, but you know what? At least it's better than Gearing, where there's no stop signs, but all of a sudden you're at an intersection and there's a giant dip. So your car bottoms out. And you're like, what?
That's scary. It's like, I'll teach you a lesson about speeding.
Yeah. And I mean, I wasn't even speeding. The speed limit was 30. I was doing like 33. And I'm just like, oh.
That's 3 too many. 3 too
Oh
many.
My
Gary,
God.
don't mess around.
So I try to avoid getting off the main streets and Gearing too, because I like the bottom of my car.
Gearing.
Well, yeah, that too.
I have no reason. It's terrible when you live here and you're really on one side or the other. Because if you're in Gearing, you at least have to come over to Walmart, which right now is really pissing people off, especially around like 4 o'clock, because you'll have all these workers from Gearing coming over to Scottsbluff, and our main bridge to get over to the other side through Broadway has been closed now for quite a while, quite a few months now.
Yeah.
They did the one way, they got that fixed, now they did the other way. So you can get out of the bridge, but you can't get in.
Yep.
Why they just didn't make it a double lane is also beyond me.
I have said that as well. I'm like,
done that.
It's a 2-lane road.
It's a 2-lane road.
Make it one lane each way. You can easily make it work, but they didn't want to. They're just like, we're just going to close the road. So now everybody's funneled over to Avenue I.
Everyone's funneled to Avenue I, and it is atrocious. Like at 4 o'clock on any given day right now, you'll have it going all the way to the Monument, all the way past Walmart, in just a straight line. It is insane.
It's ridiculous, yeah.
And then you have the trains coming.
Yep.
And there's one train that intersects them straight through, and then there's another one that luckily they have the bridge
goes
so they
over.
can go under
it.
But
yeah, I had to go down to H&R Block because we used to work in Gearing, so it was convenient for us to do H&R Block down there. And Pat works in the Gearing office. She's awesome. She did our taxes, so we just stuck with her, even though Paul doesn't work in Gearing anymore. So we had to make a special trip down there. We live a block off of Avenue B, and the next block over is Broadway. And you go Broadway, you cross the bridge, and you're into Gearing, and it's 10th Street. Mm-hmm. We get all the way to that intersection, and I'm just like, and I got to get over and turn and then go all the way around.
Yeah, and of course I'm always laughing because I still came from Sioux Falls, and before that it was Minneapolis, and before that was Denver. So it was just like big, huge cities with traffic problems is just an everyday thing for me.
Yeah.
It took me about almost a little under an hour. It was about 55 minutes solid to get from my house to my job in Sioux Falls.
Yeah.
Because it was
Because of
clear
traffic.
out.
Yeah.
Well, traffic, and it was also clear out on the skirts, but it was, it was just, it took a while.
Yep.
And it took, traffic took a while.
Even my hometown, because I'm an hour and a half north of New York City, I have to drive the next time that I go. I got to rent a car and drive because my nephew can't pick me up at the airport, and I'm not looking forward to it.
I wouldn't look forward to it.
I'm just like, dang it. And we were making
It's one of those
jokes.
things, you want to come, Connor's like,
I'll let you drive the rental car.
how about an Uber?
No.
How about an Uber?
And I was making jokes with my nephew and I need a car while I'm in town this time.
You gotta rent.
Yeah.
No, I understand. I had to do that when I was in Des Moines. Doing my business there. So you just gotta put up with it.
And I told my nephew yesterday on the phone, I said, I just didn't pay attention to traffic or anything because, David's picking me up. I don't care. You took the wrong turn? I don't care.
Yeah, 2 lefts, 2 rights, whatever.
Except for when you're down in Newark, you can't do 2 lefts and 2 rights and get back to where you're at because
I'm sure not.
this highway intersects this highway intersects this highway, and you have to make like 9 turns to get back to where you're at. I resist using anything on my phone other than just texting and calling. I just don't like using a phone for that. I do have a smartphone, but oh my God, when I have needed to use a car in New York, and I got an Android, so I'm using Google Maps, and
that's how Denver is now. Denver, I used to go to Denver all the time, especially when I could drive by myself and my parents allowed it, and loved going there. And I made it there fairly easily too, without much worry. I went recently because my sister got put in the hospital, and man, that was a trip just trying to get through that. And the hospital was right downtown.
Yep.
And geez, just getting through that.
Yep.
And
I know which hospital you went to. It's the same one Paul went to, and it was a nightmare getting to it.
It is. It's an absolute.
And then they were like,
cluster
you can go here, there for food. And I'm like, I hate McDonald's, but McDonald's right there. I'm going to go there. I can see the arches.
Right. Yeah, they're
and
right. There's like a little McDonald's. And you're right, because if you kept driving, there's a lot of really neat mom and pop restaurants. And I'm like, well, if it wasn't my situation, of course my mom was with me. So it was just like, we need to get back home.
Yeah.
Took her to Buc-ee's. There's a Buc-ee's now.
Yay.
For all the listeners, if you know Buc-ee's, you know what I'm talking about. And that's just awesome that we have one locally. Just awesome. It's the most ridiculous thing I've ever been to, but I love it.
Yeah. But that's okay. Hey, we all like different things. So the railroad at that time was the main transportation link for people everywhere, including freight. Travel by car was still a novelty. People ain't rich. My grandma even tells me that they had the family car. And she had 6 brothers and sisters. They had a car. And they really only took it out when they had to go grocery shopping.
The family sedan.
Yeah. And they only took it out when they went grocery shopping and to church. So, anyway.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah. Yeah. So, Missionaire International purchased the hotel from Avia in 2004 with the intention of renovating the hotel into apartments for their missionaries, as well as converting areas into classrooms and creating a youth center. Missionaire quickly got to work with the demolition of the hotel's interior. Yeah, I know. When I read that, I was like, no. Volunteers.
I know what you missionaries do to the insides of buildings.
Volunteers from the community helped in this process, which included replacement of most of the window glass, a new roof, and the removal of lath and plaster from the interior walls during the summer of 2005. On April 21st, 2006, Missionaire International sold the hotel to Kent and Sue Worker. The couple preferred to be known as caretakers of the Grand Hotel. They purchased the whole hotel for purely altruistic reasons. They wanted to make sure it wouldn't be torn down, and they wanted to keep a beloved and valuable piece of history in the hands of the community and the people who loved it. One thing folks don't know is that Just because you're on the historic register doesn't mean that your building still can't get raised. It can still get destroyed.
It's condemned. It needs to be taken care of because the building's not going to take care of itself.
Yeah. So
that's the only big thing I think is I made that tax joke earlier because I think that's the big thing is that you get a huge tax break or it's not taxed at all anymore.
And then according to, because when I did the story on the Opera House, which we also still need to do, you can change the interior of the building, but the exterior has to stay the same. It's why when
as long as it's still structure, as long as it's not structurally necessary. I should lab it.
And if you need to structurally do something, there's extra steps you have to go through because otherwise you'll lose your historical status. It's why when you go downtown Scottsbluff now at the Opera House, and it was something else. I call it the Opera House as well, but a lot of people know it as something else. Anyway, the tattoo shop is there, and it's got the rounded window thingies that stick out. I see. I don't know architecture. I don't know what you call them. But they get hit by hail all the time, and the structure for that is there, but the fabric has not been put back. I'm assuming that the owners can't afford to do that, but it gets hit all the time by hail, and it always looks like crap. And it sucks because sometimes downtown Scottsbluff looks really crappy, and it's because it gets hit by hail all the time. And signs are not cheap.
No.
And you can't just be like, oh, we'll make an insurance claim. Well, you make so many insurance claims, now your building ain't covered at all because nobody wants to insure you. So
just keeping up the neon, like going back to the Midwest Theater, all the neon on that, if any of that gets knocked out by hail, someone has to get back up on there. We rewire the whole thing, take out the tube, put in a new tube, and it's all money. Yeah,
it is not cheap.
It's not cheap.
In 2021, I almost said 2021, and I'm like, no, we're not that far into the future. Whatever. I'm starting to lose it here, Connor. Good thing we're close to the end. In 2021, Edavia purchased the Wheat Growers Hotel for a second time, and he sometimes gives extremely thorough tours of the hotel. You just got to, according to the website, you got to catch him on the right day at the right time.
You got to buy him lunch.
Yep. Heck yeah, I would buy him lunch. I'd be
like,
dude.
That's what I'm telling you. You just got to go buy him lunch. Just got to say, hey, man.
Yeah.
You free sometime, I'll buy you lunch. Tell me about you. Tell me about this place. And if you please could just let me peek inside.
Yeah. I brought my camera.
Thing, just a little peek,
Oh, heck no. If I'm going in, I want to go everywhere. I'm in. I'm probably never getting in again, so I'm going everywhere. So I want to read a part of a 4-page essay that Frank Cunningham wrote in 1923 to give you a kind of sense of this is kind of how everybody feels. Before today, the first Farmer's Day on December 15th, 1923, the grand opening of the Wheat Growers Hotel had been the largest opening in Kimball. It was almost 5 years to the day that I swung open my doors and welcomed the city into the first-class Wheat Growers Hotel. Everyone marveled at the decorations that I put in the lobby. I heard them all say, Frank Cunningham's gone crazy for building such a fancy place in Nebraska. I even heard one little kid say, Mr. Cunningham must be really rich or really stupid. Well, the hotel did cost me a pretty penny, about $100,000 if I remember right, but it was worth every penny. I made sure it stayed true to the roots of Kimball, wheat farming. Right in the middle of the floor is an inlaid shock of wheat in the tile, and there is a huge mural of wheat thrashing in the lobby, not to mention the bricked-in name in front of the building. That was just the decoration, though. I built a quality hotel right down to the cheapest single bedroom in the place. Sorry, I forgot. 100 years ago, bedroom was 2 words. I made sure every room had all the modern-day conveniences a person would expect in a larger town. All 86 rooms were furnished with electricity, plumbing, and steam heating. I also helped design the heating system that kept the entire building very comfortable, even in the worst storms Nebraska could throw at me. Every room that had an outside wall was heated directly, while the interior rooms stayed warm just because the cold air never reached them. That was a pretty slick piece of work, if I do say so myself. And I'll let him pat himself on the back, because that's decent engineering. Like I said, oh man, see, I didn't proofread this well enough. He misspelled, or whoever typed this up misspelled it. Like I said, it was quite a scene the first time I opened for business. I think there was over 200 people here, and that was back in 1918. I enjoyed playing tour director, showing off my pride and joy. All the rooms on the top floors, a plush lobby and restaurant on the ground floor, and Kimball's largest ballroom in the basement. I kept hearing the same question. Frank, why build it in Kimball? Well, why not? The way I figured it, the railroad brings the whole country right to my front door. Who knows, this cross-country road, the Lincoln Highway, I think they call it, might actually become popular someday and bring even more people to Kimball. And all those people need a place to stay. I think I built the best hotel between Lincoln and Salt Lake City. Well, there might be a place or two in Cheyenne that comes close. So this will give travelers a reason to stop in Kimball. I'll say it again. Why not build a first-class hotel in Kimball? The Wheat Growers Hotel is my dream come true. How did I get the money to make my dream come true? Well, like most everyone else in the area, I was a wheat farmer. During the First World War, the government was paying a premium for wheat. They needed all the supplies they could get. So like most people, I buckled down and grew as much wheat as humanly possible, to help the war effort and to make a nice profit on the side. I think this guy would have been a cool guy to hang out with.
I think so.
It sure helped that the 5 best years for growing wheat that Kimball has ever happened at the same time. Farmers are always complaining about the rain, the sun, and the wind, but during that time, nobody could say a bad thing about the weather. I had been a farmer for all my life, and I had never seen such a prosperous stretch. Indeed, I have never seen one since. I knew anything that good couldn't last. Owning my very own hotel had always been a dream of mine, so I took the opportunity to move out farming and into the hotel business. Right now, I am happy to just run the Jewel of Western Nebraska. That's the nickname for this place, the Wheat Growers Hotel. If you'd excuse me, I have some matter to attend to in the ballroom. And the Wheat Growers Hotel can be found at 102 South Oak Street in Kimball, Nebraska. And when I came across that letter, it's part of a 4-page essay that he wrote. He was proud of this. This was his dream, and I kind of get that, because in my life, one of my dreams was to be in a band, and I was in a band for 2 years, and we had 3 albums on cassette tape, but we had 3 albums.
Hey, that's pretty cool. That's pretty neat.
And I still have the cassettes, but I don't know how to pull them off and make the sound better or anything, because it was all recorded in a basement. But I get that. He got it, it didn't last, because nothing ever does. But he happened to be in the right place at the right time to make his dream come true, and he was super proud of it. So to me, when I see how that stupid coal receipt thing got all screwed up, I don't think he did that on purpose. I don't think he was trying to cheat anybody. I think he just screwed up.
Oh, yeah.
And the hotel is still there today.
And it's, yeah, and I get it screwed up. And he probably had a couple secretaries working under him. To get things screwed up.
Yeah. And I did it a few months ago. I only had $20 on the credit card, and I got dinged with a late fee. And Paul was like, "Why are we getting dinged with a late fee? It's $20. I'm like, "I paid that." Yeah, okay. So in my bank, you have to go in, you have to go to the checking account, then you click on the button so that you can pay stuff. And then you have to go to the pull down the menu to pay the bill, type in the amount, click update, and then you can click pay bill, and then
your blood type.
And then you finally confirm it. I forgot the last step.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 6 steps to pay one bill, and I forgot step number 6. So I'm like, I totally get how he could have done that. And it sucks, but the hotel is still there today. People think
It
it's
is.
haunted, whatever.
Well, I mean, just because it hasn't been used for so long. If
Yeah.
it was last operated in '88 when I was born, and it was bought from, what I understand, pretty much bought and turned into the registry when I graduated,
Mm-hmm.
which would have been 18. Yeah, that's a...
Yeah. Oh, it went on the register in 2002.
Oh, 2002. Okay.
Yeah.
I graduated in 2006.
Okay.
So,
Yeah.
around that time. But
And it's
it's still empty.
Yeah.
They don't use it for anything. I think that's the saddest part, is it should be used for something.
yeah.
And it takes a lot of work to do that.
And I know people have ideas of what they want,
Mhm.
but that takes money.
It takes
And-
money and it takes dedication.
And you still need to bring it up to Nebraska code.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why, like the Opera House here in Scotts Bluff, the first floor is a tattoo shop. But I don't know if you're ever going to get anything else redone because it needs a lot of work. And I did that story in 2015, I think it was published. And I really should have remembered the lady's name that was the realtor, man. She came dressed to the nines, high heels, everything. We get upstairs. Do you want to go on the roof? Heck yeah, I want to go on the roof. Crunch, crunch, crunch. She's walking out, and it's dark as we're walking toward the door to the roof. And I'm like, what's she crunching on? Do I want to know what she's crunching on? No big deal to her whatsoever. She opens the door to the roof, lets light in. Yeah, there's a good 3 inches of bird poop.
Bird poop.
And she has a very nice dress, hose, high heels, and she's just like, la, 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 la. Did not bother her at all.
Realtor, what are you going to do?
Yeah. But she had no issue going in there. So it will take a lot if you want to. I've been throughout, from the roof to the basement of the Opera House building.
Yeah.
And
I can only imagine that the hotel would be in some similar condition.
yeah. And they're
Yeah.
preserving it as best they can, trying to keep it up as best they can.
But now, that being said, I think it's doable, and I say that because I always point to Fort Robinson. Mm-hmm. And granted, Fort Robinson has a bit more federal backing or state backing.
They got state, yeah.
And that helps them. But they have all those houses they had to bring up to code.
Yeah.
They had many, many, many houses.
And a lot of so we'll get to Fort Rob one day, but the short version is somebody notified the state historical society. Oh, there's some folks out there, demolishing the building because I forget now who it was that owned the
That's right, you
property.
told me about
When the
that,
federal
yeah.
government said we don't want it anymore, they just started demolishing it. So the State Historical Society was like, oh my God, no, you can't demolish those. And they bought some buildings, and then Game and Parks bought some, and then the state of Nebraska bought some.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, a few buildings were already crushed and gone.
Those were destroyed.
But if you think about it, the state of Nebraska, the State Historical Society, and Nebraska Game and Parks, they've got money behind them.
They do.
So even though they're not wealthy, there were enough people that were like, oh yeah, no, we can't destroy that.
Mm-hmm. And because this hotel is it's not in a park, it's not a ancient military site, it's on city property in a city. I mean, in some little community, you can't really do it that way.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I hope that there's something that can come about. And Kimball is growing in other weird ways.
Mm-hmm.
They've opened up a new wing to their hospital, I believe, and that's really a big deal that they're getting their own little hospital. They've always had a hospital,
Yeah.
but it's growing bigger, and so
And-
that's really exciting.
And I would think if you had the means and money wasn't an object, it probably already would be restored and be something.
Yeah.
Even if even if only the restaurant was redone and you had a little
Restaurant, museum.
yeah
I'm always for museums.
yeah
But museums are hard to run to. That's the thing. You have to have the people who are dedicated to it. Just like the Harrison House out in Harrison, Nebraska. That's a bed and breakfast that you can still go to. That has a ton of history in it. But if it wasn't for the owner, and all the work she's put into it, the place wouldn't be there.
And that's a place we should do a story on too.
And I know the owner, and she's always happy. She will chat your ear off. She's and I think she's finally recuperated after a bad accident. So yep, I think hopefully she's,
there you go. I'll put that in your lap
again.
to sort it out.
I do. I need to get a hold of her. I need to see how she's doing. Yeah.
Yes.
But no, when we go up there, we'll stay there a lot.
Okay.
Sometimes my dad's house gets a little full, so I have to go. But no, we'll always go to the Harrison house, and she always welcomes us. And the rooms are beautiful. Mm-hmm. They're all they all have antique furniture down to the cabinets and the beds and the curtains and the drapes. I mean, they're all as historically accurate as you possibly can be.
Okay.
The dining room is immaculate for a house. I mean, it's a good sized house.
Yeah, I've only been in it once in the dining area.
Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. I think it's the largest house in Harrison, maybe next to the schools. Mm-hmm. Or the courthouse. Yeah.
So see, folks, there's lots of awesome buildings out here that we'll get to. If you go to Kimball and you've got 5 minutes, you can drive by the Wheat Growers Hotel.
Yeah. And check out the downtown.
Neat building.
There's some neat. You never know. There's some neat little shops, little restaurants downtown.
Yep.
That kind of pop in and out. So unfortunately, I can't name you any.
Yeah.
Because I named one to a friend before, and he's like, "That closed down a week ago." It's like, well, how it goes, you know?
Yeah. That's how it goes here. Because KNEB had a news article that there's 3 restaurants closing here in town.
The Powerhouse closed. Good riddance.
Yeah. Thank you. I went and looked at their menu, and I'm like, oh, look at your menu. Look what you're charging for this stuff. That's why you closed down.
Talk about a historic building. That's sad because they were in a very historic building.
Yes.
And a very nice one. And had so much potential to do with that building, and they just bombed it. I know people want some finer dining in town, but you need mid-size dining. And I apologize for the sound from the heat. I don't know. I can't hear it when I'm editing it, so maybe viewers can't hear it. Hopefully.
But I forgot to turn it off before we came down here today. Yeah. So it kicked on like 20 minutes ago, and I'm like, damn it.
You know, with me and food, you cannot be too pretentious around here.
Yeah.
And if you are one of those people that wants the fancier foods, you've really got to show more support to your local restaurant establishments and prove that it's worthy to do.
Yes.
Because, I mean, there are some others that do a pretty good job that really toe the line of nicer dining. We don't have anything. There's no such thing as fine dining here.
No,
I'll make that very clear. Have been to Chicago, Minneapolis.
Yeah,
all the really good places. I've spent way too much money on food. Yeah, you're not gonna break your bank.
Yeah,
going anywhere here. So
and that building is on my list of places to do. So we can talk more about that next time, or when we get to that episode. But yeah,
because and you have that now recent thing to add to it. I mean, because it had a good idea and a good short run. Mm-hmm. What was it, a year?
Yeah, they were open about a year.
Just a year, wow.
And the thing is, they had the little patio there too. So farmers market every weekend right there. Yep. Right out their front door. There's lots of vents in that little area.
They were too pretentious, too snotty, too snooty. You can't work. You can't
operate
do that way here. You got to be more friendly to the public, to your common everyday schmo.
Yep. I would have made a more, on price level, I would have been more Applebee's, Chili's price level, but
the prices,
homemade food too.
The prices weren't terrible. The food was terrible. The prices, I guess they were terrible for what you got. It was terrible.
Yeah.
But that's kind of easy. That would have been easy to fix, in my opinion. But a bartender that wouldn't make me any drink except what's on the menu, and there's only like 3 drinks on the menu.
Yeah.
It's like, what do you mean you can't make me a whiskey sour? It's like, oh no, I can only make these three drinks, and
I'm not a
cucumber, and it's like, I hate cucumber in my drinks.
I'm not a bartender, but whiskey sour is a pretty standard drink.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
I mean,
Okay.
it literally is, I mean, whiskey, lemon juice.
I'll bet
little
the
bit of sugar.
bartenders at the Wheat Growers Hotel in 1925 would do it.
Oh, I bet they would. I bet they made, especially during Prohibition.
Oh,
I
heck
bet they,
yeah.
They made me probably make a good old fashioned or, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway.
There you go. All right. Well, that's it for us this time. We'll get back to another story next time. I'm Irene,
And I'm Connor.
and this is Storytelling